Hey, good afternoon, y'all. So, tomorrow we have our 6.2 test, the end of the 6 weeks test, and we're about to go over the review. So, the review or the test really covers a lot of finding the distance between 2 points on the graph using Pythagorean theorem and just a lot more Pythagorean theorem. There are a couple of questions that deal with real numbers, whole numbers, irrational numbers, and so on. And I believe there's one or two questions about similar figures. So, let's take a look at the review. Question one says, the manager of a car dealership wants to attach a rope with flags at the top of a pole and to a stake in the ground, as shown in the diagram. Based on the diagram, what is the distance in feet from the top of the pole, right here, to the bottom of the stake? So what they're asking you to find is actually the hypotenuse. So, this is the rope with flags that they are trying to find the length of. And as you can see, I can create a right triangle. Now that I have my right triangle, I know the formula I use to find the hypotenuse, or C, is A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So, A squared is right here, or A, and B is 19.5. Again, it doesn't matter. A can be 19.5 and B can be 26. You'll still get the same answer. So A equals 26. That'll be 26 squared plus B squared, which is 19.5 squared equals C squared. So remember, whenever you square a number, you are multiplying it by itself. Okay, which is what I'm explaining right here. 26 times 26 times 19.5 times 19.5. Let's see what we get. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply 26 times 26. That equals 676 plus 19.5 times 19.5, or 19.5 squared, is going to get you 380.20. So when I add these two together, remember this is going to equal C squared. I'll get 1,056.25. So here's where I'm at right now. I'm going to go write it over here. 1,056.25 equals C squared. But again, I'm trying to find C by itself. But over here, I found out what equals C squared. I want to get rid of the squared part. So, to get rid of the squared part, what you're going to need to do is find the square root of both sides of the equation. Okay, what we do to one side of the equation, you always have to do to the other. So, the square root of anything that is being squared already, it just cancels it out. So this gets canceled out, and I'm left with C. So the square root of 1,056.25 is 32.5. So that's what your answer would be. So they're asking how long the flag is, or the rope with the flags on it is. We would answer 32.5. Moving on to question number 2, a scientific notation question. The density of oxygen is 0.001429 grams per cubic centimeter. Now they want to know, how can you write this in scientific notation? Well, what scientific notation does, it either takes a really big number or a really small number and makes it smaller. So, this number right here, 0.01429. What you're going to do, you're going to take your decimal and you're going to move it in between the first two integers you see, first two digits. Well, if I'm looking from left to right, okay, the first two digits that aren't 0 are 1 and 4. That's where I'm going to move my decimal to. How many times do we move our decimal? 1, 2, 3 times. So, now my new number will look like 1.429 times 10 to the power of -3. What this is saying is that if you want to go from this number to back to the original, before we did the scientific notation, you would take your decimal and you would move it 1, 2, 3 places to the left. And then you would get back to number right here. Question number 3. The coordinates of the vertices of the triangle are shown below. What is the length of segment PQ? So I want to find the length of this line right here. Again, take a look. What shape do we have right here? It is a right triangle. So I know that in a right triangle, the longest side will always be the hypotenuse. So I already know that this is going to be C. What formula am I going to use to find C, my hypotenuse? A squared plus B squared equals C squared. All right. Now I need to find a side length for A and B. I know that this is going to be A, and I know this is going to be B. Well, to find your side length, you just count the squares that are along the side length. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So there are 12 squares or 12 units on this side length. Okay? And then over here, B equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So A equals 12, B equals 5. So now, when I put it all together in the formula, A squared is 12 squared plus B squared, which we know is 5, C squared. So 12 times 12 is what? 144 plus 5 times 5, 25. 144 plus 25 is 169. So now we got down to 169 equals C squared. Again, I want C to be by itself. And how do I do that? You take the square root of both sides of the equation. Remember, when you're squaring something that's already being, when you take the square root of something that is already being squared, it just cancels each other out. So these cancel each other out. So I'm left with the square root of 169 is 13. Okay? So 13 equals C. That is how long the PQ segment is. That's our hypotenuse. Okay? Question 4. Jamie used a microscope to measure the diameter of a hair. She found that the diameter of the hair was 0.000072. So 0.000072. How is this number expressed in scientific notation? Again, so I start with my decimal, and I'm going to move it till I see till it's in between the first two digits that aren't 0. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So now I know that my decimal is in between 7 and 2, so it's going to be 7.2. Multiplied by 10 to the power of, well, how many spaces did we move? The decimal. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and 5 times. And again, since we already started with the small number, we're going backwards. So it's going to be 10 to the power of negative 5. Okay? 10 to the power of negative 5. So basically, if you're starting with a small number that is less than 1, okay, so it has to start with a decimal, it's always going to be times 10 to the negative power of something. Okay? Question 5. Point J is at -4 and -6. And point K is at 4 and 4. So here's K, and here is J. So the distance between these 2 points, that is what the question is asking us to find. So I need to find out, how long is that line? How long is that distance? Well, if I connect the 2 dots with lines that would create a right triangle, now I can find the line, because this is the hypotenuse. This is what C equals. This is going to be A, and this is going to be B. Remember, J and K are not part of the equation. These are just points J and K like it says in the problem. So now we're going to use the formula. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. My value for A is right here. How long is that? I just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So this is 8. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So B equals 10. So now I have my values. B equals 10. 8 is 8. So A squared is going to be 8 squared plus 10 squared equals C squared. 8 squared is 8 times 8, which is plus 10 squared. 10 times 10 is 100. I add these two together. 164 equals C squared. And then, like always, your last step is to take the square root of both sides of the equation. So I'm going to take the square root. And remember, whenever you square root something that's already being squared, they cancel out. So these are canceled out. So I'm left with the square root of 164, which happens to be, let's see, that would be 12.8. So what's the distance between the 2 points, J and K? We found out is 12.8 units. Okay? All right. Question number 6. Point M is located at 4, 6 on the coordinate grid. I know that it might be a little bit harder for you all to see because it might be small, and I apologize for that. But this is where M is at, 4, 6. Now, it tells me that I need to move this point 8 units to the left. Okay, so I'm going to take this point and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 9 units down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And this is M prime. Now remember, the reason why this is M prime is because we translated it. It's the same point, it just got moved somewhere else. So I need to find the distance between these 2 points. How do I do that? Again, you create a right triangle by connecting lines that would connect the dots together. This is going to be my hypotenuse. Here's A, and here's B. How long is A? You just have to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay? And then B equals, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay? So now we use the formula. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. I know my value for A is 8. 8 squared plus 9 squared equals C squared. 8 squared, breaking down, is 8 times 8, which we know is 64. Plus 9 times 9 is 81. Then I add these two together. 64 plus 81 equals 145. My apologies. Okay. So now I got it down to 145 equals C squared. Same thing as always, our last step. Go ahead and find the square root of both points. So the square root of 145 equals what? That would be 12.04 equals C. 12.04 equals C. Okay. Moving on. Question number 7. An artist drawing 3 square regions at their vertices to create the figures shown in the diagram. Based on the information, which statement is true? And I know that there are no statements here, but let me explain. What we want you to take away is look at what shape is in the middle of these squares. It is a right triangle. Okay. Now, In a right triangle, if we want to find the longest side, what formula do we always use? We are going to use the Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Well, I know that c is always going to be the hypotenuse, the longest side of the triangle. If I look over here, which one of these are the longest sides? Right here, which is attached to the square region z. Okay, so basically we're going to put region z right here. So what am I going to need to add up to equal region z? Well, a squared and b squared, right here, region x and region y. So region x plus region y equals region z. That's what we're trying to get, that's what we are trying to get y'all to take away from this. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. That is the Pythagorean theorem. We have been using that this whole time. That still proves true here because look, region z is the square of your hypotenuse. Region x is the square of A. Region y is the square of B. Okay? Last question. Question 8. The dimensions of a rectangular piece of paper are 8.5 inches and 11 inches. Veronica folded the piece of paper along its diagonal. Which measurement is closest to the length of the diagonal in inches? Your answer should be to the tenths place. So they're saying that a normal piece of paper is like this, with the dimensions of 11 inches and 8.5. So Veronica is folding it along the diagonal. Basically, she's folding from corner to corner. She wants to know how long that diagonal is. Well, if you look, now this looks like a rectangle, but if we get rid of this half, which we don't need, what shape do we see now? It is a right triangle. I can use the Pythagorean theorem formula to solve for my hypotenuse, which is C. Again, C represents the diagonal, which is what they are looking for in the question. So 11 is A, 8.5 is B, 11 squared plus 8.5 squared equals C squared. 11 squared is 121. 8.5 squared plus 72.25 equals C squared. We add these two together. We get 193.25 C squared, and then I take the square root of both sides of the equation to get C by itself. So the square root of 193.25 is 13.9. Now, there is one more thing that is going to be on the test, like I said earlier, that I want to go over, and it's right here. Okay? Now, if you cannot read this properly, it says right here, let me go ahead and erase this and put it in all black. Let's do this. Okay. Up here, as it says, real numbers. Okay, so all of this is included in real numbers. It is considered a real number. Now let me go ahead and put it up to the side. Real numbers. Okay. Now, what's included in real numbers? Well, we have over here rational numbers. And I'm just going to put the number symbol. Okay. What is included in rational numbers is integers and, let's see, integers, okay? And then we have whole numbers over here. And then last but not least, we have natural numbers. And then by itself over here is a rational, and I'm going to go ahead and bring it down over here by itself. Rational numbers. Okay, so what this is trying to show you, and I know this might be a little bit of a jumbled mess, I will upload a picture on to Canvas after this video. What this is saying is that real numbers, everything that is included, okay, everything that's included in the real number circle is considered a real number. Everything that is below the rational numbers is considered a rational number. Everything below the integers is considered an integer, and so on and so forth. So, I want you guys to try and study for at least maybe 30 minutes to an hour before the exam tomorrow. Good luck. If you have any questions, message me on email or Canvas. Okay?